It's the Life Upfront Engineering Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Waters, covering ideas, people, and products on the cutting edge of product development. As always, join the conversation at lifeupfront.com. Today on the show, a man who handcrafted the drum that provides the beat he's following, computational fluid dynamics expert and Simscape founder, Rich Smith. Rich, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
So, Rich, I'm fascinated by the set of balls it must have taken to leave lucrative traditional CFD vendors to start your own one-man CFD company. And before we get into your work at Simscape, I'd like to find out a little bit more about how you got here. Can you take us back through your professional history?
Okay, right. So we're gonna do an hour at least on that, are we?
So we're about a half hour total today.
Yeah, I know. So I guess my life in CFD started at BAE Systems. They actually sponsored me through my degree, University of Manchester Institute of Science and Technology. And on the end of that, having come out with a mechanical engineering degree, they kindly sponsored me again to do what is called, in Britain at least, an engineering doctorate. And that's essentially a PhD with some MBA classes. So it's kind of a half MBA plus a PhD. And at that point, that was when the CFD bug really bit hard, and I kind of dug in. And at that point, that's where I started specializing in basically mesh generation. It ended up. And so I guess, so that was what? That was 4 years, excluding the degree. Then on the end of that, or while I was doing that work with the mesh generation, I was also I'd also contacted Fluent, and Fluent very kindly provided me with their kind of a pre-release of a new piece of software called Rampant that would be, I guess, that was useful to my mesh generator in the sense that these strange meshes, these Cartesian subdivided meshes, could actually go into Rampant without any trouble, and we were generating some fabulous results. And so it basically, the relationship with Fluent blossomed from there. And at the end of the NGD, they decided, and I'm grateful that they did, that to take me on. So I ended up working in Fluent in Lebanon, New Hampshire.
This was around 96?
Yep, just at the end of my NGD. And so that was a big move for me and my wife to come across the Atlantic and set roots down in sunny, as it was when we arrived, and then very, very cold, not used to it at all.
So you must have come in the summertime and then were shocked when the snow hit.
Well, no, we arrived in the summertime. We actually did see so trying to get to the Fluent interview was a story in itself, in the sense that it was in I think it was January or February, and it wasn't just cold, it was a blizzard. In fact, our plane landed and then they shut Boston. We were supposed to be flying up to Lebanon, and no way. So crazy me decided I was hiring a car and driving up through this blizzard. I arrive, and the Fluent guys are fabulous and said, yeah, don't worry, we'll pay for the hire car. Wow. But they were a bit annoyed in the sense that they were all going skiing. And then Mr. Interviewee arrives. So then they had to show up and do some work.
So then you got snowed in with Fluent, as it were, for a couple of years.
Yeah. So that was a good time of learning, working on Gambit, the mesh generation package that they'd just acquired with their FDI purchase. And then I guess that's where I really cut my teeth in terms of real commercial C++ code writing and meshing proper.
So then you left Fluent and got back into what some might consider real engineering.
Yeah. So I've spent 2 years at Fluent and thoroughly enjoying it. One of my Fluent friends from England, Fluent Europe, Rob Lewis, was setting up it was a CFD group at Reynard Racing Cars. They were big into Indy cars at that time, but they were just about to go into F1 as well with BAR, British American Racing. And he persuaded me to come back to England, I guess, and do some more CFD, but on the racing car end of things. It was still development, but it was a lot closer to the coalface. And F1 had always been a bit of a pipe dream for me, so it was a no-brainer to go and have a look at that. And it turned out that it was interesting, but it kind of it wasn't quite what I was looking for, I guess. And so from there, I scratched another itch in terms of my dreams. I had been a big computer gamer, and I went to a computer game maker called CyberLife. And although it didn't last long, it was kind of eye-opening in the sense that just to see what the gaming industry was about. And it really is quite an amazing place, the game industry in general. Their software skills are comparable or better than I would say mine were. They have to turn around games, kind of brand new games. This was in when was this? 98, 99. They were turning around games now in those days in about 6 months, which was kind of rewriting the whole 3D engine from scratch each time. Quite an impressive feat every time watching these guys do their stuff. Anyway, I guess I learned as much as I could in the time I was there, and then I guess Fluent called, and I was interested still to go back and see what was going on.
So another couple of years with Fluent, again, more focused on grid gen, is that right?
Well, they were stayed with the Gambit side of things, or some meshing, but a big part of what I did as well was some ISO 9000 work as well. Trying to get the software development process certified more than anything. Yeah,
I suffered through that ISO QS 9000 stuff back at GM. Well, before then, but I just recall it being brutal, and somebody jokingly going into the cafeteria at work and labeling every single drawer and cabinet. In here, ye shall find plastic forks.
Yeah, I found it interesting, but it was I don't think it was something I wanted to make a career around. And in terms of software, I just think it's a difficult sell and a difficult do, I think, in both ways. It's software is so intangible. It seems like this thing was really made for making widgets. I don't know. Anyway, so
that couple of years was back in England, right?
No, this was back in the US. So we went back to England for the motor racing and the game stuff. That was a mix between Oxford area and Cambridge area. So two of the nicest areas you can go to in England. And then we came back to New Hampshire. So we were ready for the cold this time. We knew what we were getting into.
So another couple of years, and then off to the evil competitor, CD Adapco. How in the heck did that happen?
Well, there was, I guess there was a split in the development team at Fluent, whereby people parted ways. And those people, in my opinion, were some of the foundation of the good work that Fluent had done. So whatever they were doing was bound to be good, wherever they did it. And so it wasn't, it was just that I wasn't working with those people anymore. That was one of the problems, and I did enjoy it. And so I went to see what they were up to, and it turns out that they were in dire need of, not dire need, but they were definitely looking for people with my skills to help them. And so it was time to move on again. This is the CD Adapco. And so they had an office eventually not 200 meters away from Fluent. So it was kind of, it was an easy move because it's the same people you've been working with, and it's more or less the same building almost, but it's not quite. So that was a great move in terms of having like a greenfield site to do new things. And that's exactly what we did. There was some excellent work going on with the solver side of things. And I was really tasked with, I guess I won't just call it the GUI. It was more like the kind of the application interface to the humans, I guess. It was everything except the solver, minus visualization as well. And so at that point, then I got my teeth into Java, client server, GUI as well. And so we kind of went to a new place, I guess, with CFD, and that's how we came up with more or less a Microsoft like Visual Studio look, where we had like a main window and object tree properties, a lot like the CAD, some of the CAD products that were around at that time as well. So it was definitely new for CFD, and the idea that within this environment you could do everything, not have separate applications. But that wasn't bolted on really until quite a while after I left. The thought was always there, but it never happened while I was there.
So you were there for a few years, and as you told me in our last conversation, pretty happy through that time. Good work. Fascinating work. You felt like you were doing something useful, and then
definitely.
If I look back over all these various places, let's take out the gaming. That crazy gaming stop for just a minute, although it will, I think, pop back up.
Right. Yeah.
Now, if you look at this, you've got really good quality jobs with Fluent or Star CD, and you're happy. I mean, the work is pretty rewarding in all of those. But there's always been this itch. You wanted to go out on your own. So what's that all about? And how did you make that transition to say, hey, I'm going to start my own CFD company?
Right. So I guess the itch was started when we did our NGD courses related to business. There was a lot of it always seemed to be that the way the MBAs were structured in Britain, at least at that time, was that you're going to set up your own business at some point. There was no mention of banking or merchant banking or any of the kind of financial job side of things. This was small potato in those days in terms of our my experience. And the other thing is, it was an NGD, Doctor of Engineering, so they were really trying to get us to stay in engineering if possible. And so they sold us on all kinds of ideas about what you do when you're in business as a small entrepreneur, And so I think that was where the itch started. And after that, I guess I looked at Fluent and I looked at CD Adapco, and it seemed like they were targeting the same market, the same players, and they were big GEs who had unlimited resources to buy software. And so there was no real constraints on what software we were actually selling in terms of price or support. So it was like the Rolls-Royce of CFD software. And it seemed like to me there wasn't really a second tier, what would you say, a forward focus version.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was at least one thought that went through my head.
I know what you mean by, or what you meant to mean by unlimited funds for buying software. I only wish that were true.
Well, that's what it seemed like. I mean, I wasn't really in any way connected with the sales side of things at Fluent or CD. So it does seem like, we could do whatever we wanted with the software, and there was always buyers, and we always seemed to do very well. I'm sure it was, if you would listen to the sales guys, and as you know, it was a lot more difficult than that. But that was my kind of closeted version of sales truth.
Okay. So you strike out on your own, and I think pretty quickly after this was the first time it registered on my horizon. I heard of SimLab. That was the product, right. and I think early on you had a customer. I was working for a CFD company at the time who mentioned it to me, and I was selling that sort of mid-range product, but not nearly the kind of price point that you were shooting for.
Right.
And basically, if there was a customer who was going to go for SimLab, they definitely weren't even in the ballpark to talk to us or Fluent.
Right. And in lots of ways, I think that was still while I was at my confused phase in terms of where I was really targeting things. My initial thought on leaving CD was to target this kind of a fluid specialization for gaming in terms of make some kind of fast way to get a flow field that they could use then to push dust or smoke or whatever around in this kind of sandbox of a game. And so that really put me down the the panel method route, which would have, exceedingly fast, but fairly limited in its applicability. But the gaming world, physics is secondary to it looking good.
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't have to be experimentally correct. It's got to look cool.
But then you start looking around and you start seeing these game guys, as smart as they are, have already figured this out, really. And one of the things one of the companies you used to work with,
Next Limit, yeah.
Next Limit, yeah.
Yeah, so Next Limit had X-Flow, and there wasn't so much for gaming, I don't think, but they were doing a lot of work in a similar world for, let's say, Hollywood, where you look at these commercials on TV where you see these really cool water effects.
Right.
Like the bottle of soda turning into just a complete bottle of liquid. So the plastic disappears immediately. That sort of stuff. And they were big into that. So, and I think have done and continue to do quite well with it.
Yeah, I think they're really the kind of the leaders in that field, especially, like you say, especially for effects in movies and commercials and TV. But I mean, that was kind of the world I was looking to kind of get into, and to compete with that, I just didn't see any way to do it, to be honest. And so I refocused them back onto engineering side of things, and it was just basically setting up I guess I call it a simulation environment. So it was various pieces, modules that I brought together within Cadium, which it became Cadium SimLab. And
SimLab was a much better name. I hate to say that, but what happened with that?
Okay, so I got a letter one day from SimLabs with an S, and they were basically saying, you are not infringing, but you're kind of, what was it? It was a copyright issue, I suppose. They seem to think that SimLab was infringing on their SimLabs trading name. So, I mean, they were doing at the time LDAP, which is something to do with directories or databases that sit on an intranet, and you can look them up. So you could like email, I don't know, you can find the email of somebody in the business and blah, blah, blah. It was totally unrelated to engineering software. It was a very different world. But I decided, look, I don't want to spend years, and I don't want to spend too much any money on this kind of issue. So I just moved out the way and said, okay, I'll find another name. And so that's when we came up with Cadium. The irony is, I just looked up, because I knew we were going to talk about this. I just looked up SimLabs, and they are no longer in existence. They were bought out by Quest Communications or somebody. And so, now it's a non-issue. But that's, what, 6 or 7 years too late, I think.
Well, now that I think about it, I did not hear of SimLab at the very beginning because I always associated it with OpenFOAM. So I think I came in later. You said you started with panel method.
Yep. So
how did you get into OpenFOAM?
So the panel method went live. I'm just looking at the dates. It went live, I think, in 2007, about February 2007. I think it may have been live just before then. That's when I started talking about it. And so that was the Cadium, the simulation environment was there. We had a geometry module. There was the panel method, which came with it, with the meshing tools that were embedded natively. And then there was visualization on the end of that. And then I guess from that moment onwards, though, it was clear that the panel method, while interesting, it has a limited scope in terms of usefulness. And so kind of started looking around for CFD, and I was well aware of OpenFOAM. I'd met Henry Weller when he used to consult for Fluent, so I had a lot of confidence in him, and I still do. I think he's one of the geniuses in the CFD world when it comes to putting code together and making sure it's consistent and coherent. So I was kind of naturally drawn towards this. The only thing was, though, my customer base, and I envisaged it going forwards, my customer base will be Windows, mainly Windows. And OpenFOAM did not do Windows at all. It was very Unix oriented, down to file names just varying in capitalization. So that was a real pain on Windows. You couldn't represent that on Windows by default. So I worked a little bit with him, trying to figure out how we might, fit this into the Windows world, and eventually came up with a procedure which was we compile OpenFOAM on Linux for Windows, so it's cross-compiling, and that seemed to work pretty well. And from that moment on, then I was kind of invested in OpenFOAM going into Cadium. So OpenFOAM then became another add-on, another module within Cadium. And so Cadium sets up all the parameters and control, they're called dictionaries, I guess, files, runs OpenFOAM in the background as a separate process, and then extracts the results and presents them in kind of a standard visualization, post-processing world. And so the user doesn't really touch OpenFOAM at that level. They may or may not be aware of it, and so that's kind of where that came out, or the first release of that, I think, was around 2009. So it's not that long ago, I suppose, in the world of CFD. That's pretty new.
Yeah, it feels like it was 10 years ago to me.
Yeah.
I don't know how that happened. Now, that's an interesting point. You just said that you don't care if your customers, or you don't expect your customers to really worry about whether it's OpenFOAM powering this thing or not.
No.
And that's not your mission. And that's interesting because I just had a conversation with John Bukowski at CSpace. And they've rolled out an OpenFOAM based solver on their platform.
Right.
And he talked quite a bit about OpenFOAM, and there's a lot of people talking about OpenFOAM in the CFD community.
Yeah.
It's probably I've heard that it's maybe John said this, but it's the third most popular solver used out there behind So the commercial codes.
I can believe that. Yeah.
But you don't focus on that at all. And so what's your thinking there?
So I guess I'm trying to offer an end-to-end environment for doing simulations, and specifically focused on CFD. And the issue with the OpenFOAM, I guess, if you want to call it an issue, is that it is difficult and tricky to use in its kind of raw command line state. And the people who are aware of it, and people are willing to deal with that, and maybe they have some special needs in terms of some special models they've actually compiled or written, or some special pre-processing stroke post-processing, then I don't think OpenFOAM in that sense is of any appeal to the people that I'm targeting this application at. The people I'm targeting are people who are visually oriented, maybe fairly complicated geometry, such that they need to see it early, and they need to see it a lot, because they may have to knit some surfaces together to form some volumes or things like that. And they're also more than likely used to playing with CAD systems. My experience, a lot of the OpenFOAM community tend to focus in on geometry that is very specific to their application area, and maybe doesn't change all that much, in the sense of they see it once in a CAD system possibly, and then from that moment onwards, they're constantly changing parameters with the OpenFOAM side of things. So I think the OpenFOAM mention that we make is to give credit to the team, and to say that we have a version of OpenFOAM that is freely available if anybody wants to download the source and play with it themselves and modify it and follow in the GPL licensing scheme, then that's fine. But most of the people I find are more interested in just having, they have their geometry. It's a Venturi device they're playing with, or it's some kind of cooling device. It's that thing that they're focused on, and it's that it came from a certain CAD system, and that's their motivation. Just the OpenFOAM piece just doesn't seem to interest them. If anything, it may scare them a little if they suddenly hear the word OpenFOAM and think they have to run this thing command line sense, if they've heard of it at all. So,
well, I think how it really benefits your customer base or your prospect base is really more in the pricing of the overall tool. So you've got a couple of advantages. One, OpenFOAM is open source,
right?
So you don't have any direct costs for the solver piece of it. Well, I'm sure you do a lot of development to make it all work, but
right.
But then also you are a one-man band, and this is the thing that intrigues me is you have this entrepreneurial spirit. You readily admit that this is a lifestyle business, and it is scratching that itch that you weren't able to scratch for all those years working for others.
Right.
But what are some of the price points for your offerings, and how does that compare to what these smaller customers often would see on the market?
Right. So, the main prospect set that we look at are small engineering companies, less than 10 people probably, and then also small engineering consultancies who may do some CFD. But I guess the overriding pattern that I see is that these guys typically do intermittent CFD in the sense that they might use it intensely for a month, or maybe for one project which might last for 3 months, or maybe even 6. But then they'll kind of drop it or not need it for quite a while. And so we've tried to price. Well, we charge subscriptions first of all, so it's kind of time locked and limited licensing. So we offer a month, 3 months, and a year. And the most popular one is basically the 3-month one, or has been up to now. And I think that corresponds to kind of the length of the prospects and the customers that we support, their projects. The pricing for that kind of thing. That's the other thing that I guess that we've bit the bullet and actually put our pricing up on our website, which is kind of unusual for CFD.
Oh, you're totally transparent there. Yeah.
Whether it's a good thing or not, I don't know. But I just like the idea of, put me in the ballpark. Tell me roughly how much this thing's going to cost, and I can either not waste my time or, I can move on. Whatever. I like the idea of seeing the price. That's me as a consumer and as a seller of things. It saves people kind of, doing a dance with somebody and then telling them the price, and then suddenly, no, that's way too much. Or anyway, so I guess our professional offering, which is kind of all our modules rolled into one package. You're looking at, for a single month, that's about $750.
$750 under $1,000.
Yeah, for 1 month. And then as you go up the scale, like 3 months, it works out at $500 per month. And then you go to 12 months, it works out at about $420 a month.
So we're talking an order of magnitude or more in difference from traditional commercial codes.
Definitely, in terms of if you put it up against the parallel pricing that you get charged. I guess that's one big difference. We don't charge per process, or we don't have a per process licensing. And I guess that is quite unusual in the sense that really gets the price down to 2-3 orders of magnitude less than some of the licensing that you'll see for like big clusters. So an example of this was that Acertech, they do the water cooling you find in a lot of PCs and a lot of data centers now. They were looking to demonstrate their latest water cooling cluster stroke cabinets. And they wanted to run as many processes. They had 1,000, over 1,000 node cabinet. And they were after running something that would generate enough heat to heat a jacuzzi, because this was going to be their display at this, Supercomputing 2012. And they couldn't. I
could just imagine who they had in the jacuzzi too, but go ahead.
There was a jacuzzi there, I tell you. It was. And so the idea was that, the water in this jacuzzi was the heat sink, basically. So they were looking around for something that they could do this with, and there was no way that any of the existing vendors, big high-end vendors that charge, limit their parallel processes according to price, could help them. And then I said, sure, you just buy one license Arcadium and you can run it on as many of those processes as you want, as long as it's kind of through a cluster manager, which it was. It was Microsoft's HPC server. And so they were thrilled, and it heated the jacuzzi for them. So I think
let's go back to this. Okay, so there is a huge price component to your business in attracting customers, but obviously, if there's enough value in something, you can justify higher prices and going with traditional CFD companies. So who should come to Simscape and say Cadium and you, instead of going to one of those other companies?
Well, I think they should look around and just get a lay of the land and just see what these other companies are offering and what we're offering and the pricing involved. I'd say that given the intermittent use of Cadium by our various customers, that's kind of one big feature where they don't have to lock in for a year or too long or longer than their project is going to be. But at the same point, we offer, I offer full support. I get that customer to the point where they're self-sufficient within Cadium. And so, if Cadium was that difficult to use, then I've just taken off a terrible piece of work, haven't I? I'm going to be supporting people forever and a day and not get anywhere. Well, that's not what happens. It's quite impressive in the sense that with the tutorials we offer on the website and the workflow that Cadium provides, which is consistent through all the different modules, it turns out that the support load isn't as high or anywhere near as high as some of the existing kind of legacy software that you see around. So I think that's where we kind of pick up some speed, as it were. I also it wasn't that long ago where I actually increased the prices by quite a factor in terms of because of this support load. And I don't think we've seen sales drop off, really. I mean, I think people still appreciate the support and the software that we provide at that point.
Well, it's interesting, when you think about this, I see it happening in a lot of other industries. There's this movement to entrepreneurialism. That's a hard word to say.
It is.
Where people who have been sort of in a 9-to-5 business at a big company decide to strike off on their own and create a dog biscuit company or whatever it happens to be. And you've done that. You just happen to have done it with CFD, computational fluid dynamics. Yeah. But you're not the only one, and it's amazing how niche this is. I've seen there's another fellow that I follow, Patrick Hanley. He's got, I think, Stallion CFD. Yeah. But aren't you a little worried that the market could become flooded with lifestyle business CFD providers?
Yeah, and I actually wrote about this quite a while ago in terms of when Ansys bought Fluent. That meant, we kind of went from three big CFD companies. There was Ansys, CFX, Fluent, and CD Adapco. We went from 3 down to 2. And so Ansys now had 2 full CFD teams. And we're talking, I don't know, maybe 50 people in each team. Anyway, I said at the time, well, there's going to be quite a few of those people that leave because, they're not going to have bought Fluent for the good of their health. There's an efficiency issue. And it's true. So quite a few people from Fluent, and I don't know the CFX side well, but I know the Fluent side have left and started doing, what they know best, which is CFD. And so there's been quite a few small companies starting up and doing this. I think the thing that, I think it's a big space. I think CFD is huge in the terms of the actual place and the terms of growth, especially down at the end where I see people. There's, if you think about the number of big companies, and then you start going down to medium size and small companies, and small as in less than 10, not the US definition that's less than 500 people. That's still a relatively big company in my world. I'm in the less than 10 world. There's just such a supply of those, and if you don't limit yourself to the US, I mean, you look at places east and west. I mean, we've got customers in Australia, Italy, France, throughout Europe, South America, and we provide some assistance in terms of translations for some of those countries as well. So I think there's plenty of space for plenty of people, and no two companies are exactly the same. I think Patrick Hanley's work is great in the sense that it's if you consider CFD a niche, then he's niched that down to aerodynamics and offers an excellent set of tools, not only Stallion, but less than that in terms of designing just single airfoils and things. And he has the full spectrum there for doing some kind of, aerodynamic aeroplane-based analysis, and I think that's a good thing. And I think we're a little bit more general purpose, if you want to say. It's like a niche calling a niche. I don't know.
Well, good. Rich, I really appreciate you coming on and opening the kimono to your business and I guess your life.
Sure.
How can people find out more about KDM? I have seen some really cool videos. I think you have a YouTube channel. Where are the best places to find you?
Best place, I guess, is simscape.com, and that's SYM as in symmetry, and then scape as in Netscape. So simscape.com. From there, all paths lead to good things, CFD.
Great. Well, folks, go try this. Take a look at the videos. And is there a way to try it, or do you just buy it? Do you have an evaluation period?
Yep, we have a free 30-day trial that you can download on the website. You put in your name and your email address, and then out pops an automated email trial license key. Great.
Yeah, and if you have an experience, if you have an experience with KDM and you like it or you don't like it, either one, leave some comments with this story. I'd love to hear what your experience is with the tools.
Me too.
That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening to the Life Upfront Engineering Podcast. Visit lifeupfront.com to comment and connect with me on Twitter, Google+, and LinkedIn. Also, you can really help the show by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again. Until next time.